Okay, we're going to begin looking at stoichiometric practice using this worksheet. And before we get started with our equation, one thing we have to make sure we understand is this reaction here. This is saying that 2 moles of sodium hydroxide react with 1 mole of sulfuric acid to generate 2 moles of water and 1 mole of sodium sulfate. This is a 2 to 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. This is my molar ratio for this reaction. As long as I keep this in mind when I'm doing my stoichiometry, I should be able to predict how much of another substance I can create or need to use based on that molar ratio. Okay, let's work this problem. It says, if I have how many grams of sodium sulfate, so I want to know how many grams of sodium sulfate will be formed if I start with 200 grams of sodium hydroxide. Okay, now since I have an excess of sulfuric acid, that means I really don't have to worry about it. It means I'm going to have some left over. It is the sodium hydroxide driving what I need to use. So I put 200 grams of sodium hydroxide. That's my given. That's what I begin with. I draw my line straight across. Now remember our mass to mole to mole to mass again, okay? We're starting here. We need to get to the mole. The way to get to a mole is, say, 1 mole of sodium hydroxide is equivalent to the molar mass. The molar mass of sodium hydroxide is 23, 24, 24 plus 16 is 40. So 40 grams of sodium hydroxide. Okay? That way this gram here and that gram there of sodium hydroxide cancel out. Now I'm at moles. So now I'm going from mole to mole. When I do a mole to mole equation, I need to look at my original equation here. Now, I have moles of sodium hydroxide up here on top, so moles of sodium hydroxide have to be here at the bottom. So from my original equation, I can see 2 moles of sodium hydroxide are in ratio with 1 mole of sodium sulfate. That way my moles of sodium hydroxide cancel out. Now I'm at the unit of mole of sodium sulfate. So I'm at mole here. I need to get back to mass. So I say 1 mole of sodium sulfate is equivalent to how many grams of sodium sulfate? Well, let's do the math here. Let's calculate 16 times 4 plus 32 plus 23 plus 23, 142 grams. So 142 grams of sodium sulfate. Now, the moles cancel out, and I'm at my unit of grams of sodium sulfate. That's what it's asking right here, correct? So I have 200 times 1 times 1 times 142 divided by 40 times 2 times 1. So if I take 200 times 42 and I divide it by 80, I get 105. So I have 105 grams of sodium sulfate if I begin with 200 grams of sodium hydroxide. I can predict how much of this will be made if I know this. Okay? Give you a minute to look at that and write it down. Okay, now let's move this down a little bit. Let's do another one. Okay? So it says, using the following equation, how many grams of lithium nitrate? So I want to know how many grams of lithium nitrate will be needed to make 250 grams of lithium sulfate. Now your question can be a reactant or a product. And as long as you have one of these masses in a balanced equation, you can do a mass-to-mass stoichiometric calculation. So I begin with 250 grams of lithium sulfate. And remember, I have mass. I need to get to mole. Then I'll go to mole and back to mass. This right here is my balanced equation. So I go from mass to mole. I know 1 mole of lithium sulfate equals how many grams of lithium sulfate? While I'm doing it, you do it as well. It's 64 plus 32 plus 7 plus 7. So 110 grams of lithium sulfate. That way my lithium sulfate and grams cancel out. I am now to moles. Now I need to look at this equation here. It's my mole to mole. I know that I have 2 moles of lithium sulfate. So 2 moles lithium sulfate is in ratio with 4 moles of lithium nitrate. So 4 moles of lithium nitrate. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I've been given. My unknown, my given. So I cancel out my moles of lithium sulfate. And now I'm working into lithium nitrate. I know that 1 mole of lithium nitrate is equivalent to, 14 plus 7, 69 grams of lithium nitrate. So to find out how many grams of lithium nitrate I'm going to need, I take 250 times 1 times 4 times 69. Then I'll divide it by 110 times 2 times 1. So, let's see, divided by 220, I get 316.34. 313.64 grams of lithium nitrate will be needed if I want to make 250 grams of lithium sulfate. I hope that helps.